An ability that's become almost as common as flight or super speed is the power to cast illusions or mind tricks on one's opponents to disorient or even trick them into acting out of character and doing things against their own interests. One of the more recognizable instances of this sort of ability in recent years has undoubtedly been Genjutsu from the Naruto series that has varying levels of severity and the potency of its illusions. However, another case that tends to stand out as well, occasionally in correspondence with heated discussions regarding Genjutsu, is Kyoka Suigetsu, Sosuke Aizen's Zanpakuto that utilizes the ability to alter its opponent's senses, which has played a crucial role in his dark games to overthrow the order of the Soul Society. Just as I've done with Bankai and the domain expansion ability from Jujutsu Kaisen previously, today I'm going to compare these two illusion-based abilities to one another to see which may be better overall. As I mentioned earlier, this topic is a fairly heated one, so I'll just reiterate once again that I am only comparing the two abilities, not necessarily their users or which of them are stronger than the other. If you think Aizen beats all of Naruto or that every Genjutsu user could beat Aizen, it doesn't really matter to me or this discussion either way, and I am just here to cover the two abilities. In Naruto, there are three main forms of combat used by shinobi. There is taijutsu or hand-to-hand combat. Ninjutsu, which most just refer to as plain ninja magic, consists of manipulating your own chakra into big blasts like the Rasengan, using it for healing purposes, or even creating seals as well, can each fall under what would be considered ninjutsu. But lastly, and what our main focus is in this video today, Genjutsu is centered around illusions. Like ninjutsu, there are many different types of genjutsu, and as a result, there exist shinobi who focus solely on the subject as genjutsu experts, like C from the village hidden in the clouds. While realistically, any shinobi from any sort of background could utilize the form of combat, a large portion of genjutsu users we see on screen hail from the Uchiha clan originating in the Leaf Village. And this is because of the Sharingan dojutsu synonymous with its people. The Sharingan allows its users to not only copy most taijutsu or ninjutsu they may witness, but allows them to cast genjutsu through simple eye contact with their opponents as well. While this video is titled Kyoka Suigetsu vs Genjutsu, and we will briefly discuss the other types of genjutsu throughout the Naruto series, the focus will primarily be comparing Kyoka Suigetsu and the Sharingan or dojutsu-based genjutsu in general, as it is what is usually honed in on when it comes to this topic in particular. Given that there are many different types of dojutsu throughout the series, there are plenty of genjutsu-based abilities to go along with them as well. The base Sharingan can then develop into a Mangekyo Sharingan, and the Mangekyo gives each of its users an ability unique to themselves. Itachi Uchiha is already quite proficient in genjutsu, but his Mangekyo ability to top it off is Tsukuyomi, a genjutsu that traps its victims in a world of Itachi's own creation. Though it is an illusion, the damage sustained in the Tsukuyomi created space is very real, so much so that even a powerful jonin like Kakashi can only be treated by Tsunade, one of the legendary Sannin and arguably the face of medical ninjutsu. With Tsukuyomi, Itachi uses clones to repeatedly stab Kakashi over the course of 3 days within his domain, but given that Itachi was holding back on Kakashi here, it's likely he can do much more. Itachi's old friend Hisui Uchiha similarly has a remarkable illusion-based Mangekyo ability, being Korowa Matsukami. With this ability, Shisui can rewrite aspects of a person's past and their manner of thought to perform commands given to them at their purest form. While this plan was intercepted by Danzo, Shisui intended to use Korowa Matsukami to prevent war in the Leaf by having the leader of the Uchiha clan disregard his goals to stage a coup, which would have fundamentally changed not only how the Uchiha are perceived by the rest of the world, but the trajectory of the ninja world as it exists today. Then looking outside these more outlandish variants of genjutsu, we likewise have sound-based genjutsu to stand alongside ocular ones, such as Tai Yuya's demonic flute or Jiraiya's frog song and his sage mode transformation. But in comparison to things like Tsukuyomi or Korowa Matsukami, these are more so grounded variants of genjutsu, as they purely focus on immobilizing and weakening their targets. Admittedly not as cool as Korowa Matsukami, Tsukuyomi, or other powers rooted in genjutsu that we'll more so cover as we begin our comparison, but that only goes to show just how many different types of genjutsu there are that vary in both potency and how useful their ability may be in any given scenario. And we can talk about other examples of genjutsu in Naruto as we weigh it up against Kyoka Suigetsu. Throughout the Soul Society, Soul Reapers utilize their Zanpakuto in battle. These Zanpakuto possess a variety of abilities that can strengthen or weaken given the user's control over the Zanpakuto spirit, and very few Zanpakuto embodied that idea of control like Kyoka Suigetsu. Sosuke Aizen is captain of 5th Company, and he used the power of his Zanpakuto to create the scenario necessary to put him in this situation. Initially, the 13 court guard companies were led to believe that Kyoka Suigetsu was a water-type Zanpakuto that diffuses reflections of fog and water to confuse its enemies so that they may attack and kill one another, but this lie was forged to hide the true nature of Kyoka Suigetsu's power, complete hypnosis. As Aizen describes it, complete hypnosis disrupts the senses so that the victim misidentifies the enemy. Appearance, shape, size, texture, and even smell are affected. In other words, a fly can appear to be a dragon or a swamp a flower garden, and the spell is activated when the victim bears witness to Kyoka Suigetsu's release. Having seen it once and from that moment on, they are under its hypnotic power, and each subsequent time I release Kyoka Suigetsu, the hypnotic control returns. Kyoka Suigetsu's single greatest strength is that the illusion persists long after its targets are initially captured by its release. This is demonstrated in Fake Karakura Town when the 13 court guard squads and the Vizards each attack who they believe to be Aizen, but is truly revealed to be Momo Hinamori. Enraged, his former captain Shinji asked Aizen how long he's been using Kyoka Suigetsu's illusions, to which he replies by essentially saying that at no point has he ever released them from its spell. This would mean that from the very moment Aizen placed not only the Vizards, but other members of the court guard under complete hypnosis, they have remained under that hypnosis for over 100 years. Zanpakuto are generally meant to complement their users in who they truly are within the depths of their soul. But Aizen himself may be the sole greatest example of this, as he has taken Kyoka Suigetsu's complete hypnosis to its full capability, paired with his knack for trickery and deception, in his grand plot to place himself at the top. Despite this truly enormous advantage to its user, Kyoka Suigetsu does have some weaknesses that are important to mention in this discussion. The first being that anyone who touches the blade before the illusion takes hold will be immune to its effect, this being something Gin eventually grew to discover over the course of his servitude to Aizen, and that he integrated into his plans to betray him, as well as something Yamamoto seemed to have figured out as well by letting Kyoka Suigetsu pierce his body, stating, "If it were only seen with my eyes and felt with my flesh, I might have been deceived, but there is no mistaking the spirit energy of the Zanpakuto that has pierced my entrails." Like any other Zanpakuto, Kyoka Suigetsu's effect can be negated by destroying the blade itself as well. This was actually done by Yuha at the tail end of the war arc, when he puts his hand through Aizen's chest after Aizen had previously merged with his Zanpakuto through the power of the Hogyoku. And following this, Yuha himself says that Kyoka Suigetsu's effect seems to have come undone. While Kyoka Suigetsu isn't the only illusion or mind hacks based ability in Bleach, as there is also Shinji's Sakanade, which produces its reversed world, and Tsukishima's Book of the End Fullbring, Kyoka Suigetsu's control of all 5 senses and being able to mask even his spiritual pressure is truly something remarkable, not only in this vacuum of illusionary based abilities, but within the context of the series as a whole. And it's interesting to see moments where it clashes against other strong hacks like the Almighty throughout the series. Moving on to our comparison, I think a fairly decent starting point is to discuss the conditions for the illusions to be activated or how they are cast upon their opponents. While some sound-based genjutsu have their own individual setup processes, genjutsu such as Kurenai's instead require the use of hand seals, and even characters like Itachi with his ephemeral genjutsu can trap his opponents with the point of his finger, Sharingan genjutsu is activated through direct eye contact with its targets. This presents a problem, since throughout both Bleach and Naruto, or even fights in a real world between professionals in the ring or amateurs on the street, looking into your opponent's eyes is extremely common, and this is why genjutsu is considered a pretty universally accepted win-con for any Sharingan user in most debates, unless they're fighting Daredevil or Toph. Kyoka Suigetsu similarly requires its opponents to observe its release, but it's admittedly not really as simple as the aforementioned eye contact with your opponent. On the surface, you may not understand how exactly they could be different, but picture this. There is someone significantly faster than both a Sharingan user and someone using Kyoka Suigetsu. If they both get blitzed, the Kyoka Suigetsu user will have a much harder time raising their blade and releasing the Zanpakuto for the attacker to see than the Sharingan user who just has to make eye contact once, even if while being attacked. Admittedly, there are plenty of opponents and even Genjutsu users themselves like Madara who have the kind of character that would allow Aizen to release his Zanpakuto right in front of them solely because they desire to see what he may be capable of, but I digress. Next, I believe another important topic of discussion is covering how exactly the Sharingan or Kyoka Suigetsu can be countered, or how those facing off against it have managed to defeat it throughout the series. We briefly covered these before, but just to recap, Kyoka Suigetsu is countered by either breaking the blade like with any Zanpakuto, or making contact with and touching it before complete hypnosis is activated. We see Yuha technically break Aizen's blade towards the end of the war arc when he pierces Aizen with his arm, since Aizen is fused with his Zanpakuto at this point through evolving with the Hogyoku, and Kyoka Suigetsu is released following this. And through years of servitude, Gin manages to squeeze the piece of information regarding making contact with the blade out of Aizen. Sharingan-based Genjutsu can be broken, resisted, or negated by possessing a similar ocular prowess to the caster, but the universal method of releasing oneself from the illusion is by disrupting the flow of your chakra that the Genjutsu manipulates. This is information provided to us by both Jiraiya and Chiyo, who states that Genjutsu isn't very good outside of one-on-one encounters because of this method. When solely discussing inverse topics, these counters are pretty known or open to be exploited by those operating under the similar rule set, but for cross-verse scenarios, this is good for both sides, since those under Sharingan Genjutsu probably don't understand how to operate a chakra network and would therefore be stuck in the hypnosis. It is arguable that the conditions to escape Kyoka Suigetsu, touching or breaking the blade, are more so possible, but from there it then becomes a discussion about how likely an opponent is to do so. Moving on, I'd like to talk about what I can only really describe as the potency of the illusions. But what do I mean by this? Tsukuyomi, as we mentioned prior, can completely incapacitate opponents such as Kakashi, or in some cases even kill its targets, something we see done in the light novels following the story of Itachi and the Uchiha clan massacre, but even other characters wielding ocular abilities like Sasuke or Madara in some of their fights with ease through the use of Genjutsu as well, without any sort of physical exchange. Sasuke does this at the Kage Summit against C, who is once again a Genjutsu expert, and Madara specifically switches back to his Eternal Mangekyo from the Rinnegan to deal with the Raikage. This is to say that Kyoka Suigetsu doesn't really physically affect or outright defeat enemies the same way by comparison. Yes, Aizen can fool his opponents with the Shikai or set up traps to get them to attack one another, but Kyoka Suigetsu itself can't just straight up body opponents with the illusions it casts alone or affect them the same way Sharingan Genjutsu does. A good example of this is when Aizen is forced to take precautions against Yamamoto despite the fact he has been under complete hypnosis for over 100 years, and ends up giving himself away when he attacks Yama since he can sense the spiritual pressure from his Zanpakuto. The closest instance of Kyoka Suigetsu operating in a similar manner is in the first invasion, when after Yuha visits Aizen in the Mukin to offer him a spot in the Quincy army, he casts a hypnosis on him that alters Yuha's perception of time, leading him to believe he had more time to move freely in the Soul Society before having to return to the Vondenreich than he actually did. This, however, is in comparison to, again, a Sharingan Genjutsu like Tsukuyomi that had altered Kakashi's perception of time to experience 72 hours worth of pain and torment all in less than a moment, using his own words. Part of this could be attributed to the fact that Genjutsu attacks the distribution of chakra throughout the body, but I believe Genjutsu wins on this point nonetheless. This leads into another point that I feel more so works against Kyoka Suigetsu, and that's variety. Complete hypnosis alters the 5 senses, and Aizen uses this to deceive his opponents both in and out of combat, but that's it. Genjutsu does similarly focus on tampering with the 5 senses, but Sharingan Genjutsu has far more illusion-based capability beyond that, which we briefly touched on earlier. But to further elaborate, we have Kodowa Matsukami that completely alters the manner in which someone behaves and perceives the world around them exactly as Shisui commands. Then we delve into the strongest Genjutsu itself, the Infinite Tsukuyomi that casts the eye over the moon, trapping the entire planet in the hypnosis that places them in a dream realm forged by their deepest desires, all while eventually turning them into an army comprising of white Zetsu. The setup for Infinite Tsukuyomi isn't exactly ideal, but we have others that function a lot easier like Izanagi or Izanami. Izanagi in particular is quite notable considering it is a low form of reality manipulation that allows its users to cast a Genjutsu on themselves in order to make their death in the midst of battle an illusion. We see Danzo do this at the 5 Kage Summit as he is repeatedly killed by Sasuke and uses his armful of Sharingan to cast Izanagi, making his death an illusion every single time. Izanami, on the other hand, was created as a punishment for members of the Uchiha who abused Izanagi, locking its target in a loop of infinitely repeated actions until they realize they've betrayed who they truly are, acknowledging the reality of themselves and their situation. It's quite apparent we've come a long way from simply altering the 5 senses, and Kyoka Suigetsu never really demonstrates this level of illusionary prowess beyond altering the 5 senses. It's somewhat remarkable that throughout the entirety of the Bleach manga, very few if any characters present any sort of capability for illusion resistance at all, which makes Kyoka Suigetsu as dangerous as it is, whereas in Naruto we have Genjutsu that are solely made to counter just how broken other Genjutsu are, going way beyond the 5 senses. There's even more we don't currently know about, considering we are never shown characters like Madara's or Izuna's Mangekyo ability in the manga, so the list could get even longer, but this category just undoubtedly has to go to Genjutsu without any real contest, and I believe this is one of the stronger areas where the Sharingan is preferable to Kyoka Suigetsu. Not really a point of comparison, but something I feel is worthy of note about both abilities is their use of tools as Espionage. Many rightfully commend Aizen for using Kyoka Suigetsu's illusions in his pursuit of the throne at the royal palace, using his captain Shinji's distrust to his advantage by placing someone who is not himself by his side as he conducts his work behind closed doors, faking his death to wash his hands of the chaos erupting in the Soul Society during the Ryoka's invasion, and acting as Central 46 after slaughtering them in order to proceed with Rukia's execution so that he may obtain the Hogyoku. With the use of the Sharingan, Obito likewise dabbles in matters of trickery and deception, taking control of the Nine Tails to attack Konoha in a manner that would paint the Uchiha clan as the culprits, furthering the at the time high tensions between themselves and the rest of the Leaf Village. The 4th Mizukage Yagura also fell victim to Obito as he used his eyes to gain control of Yagura, leading the Hidden Mist Village into an era characterized by bloodshed and despair as he followed Obito's command under the influence of the Sharingan. Danzo Shimura would attempt to cast Kodowa Matsukami on Mifune in order to sway the rulings of the summit more so in his favor to become leader of the allied shinobi forces, and he would have gotten away with it if this wasn't discovered by Ao, a mist ninja at the summit who utilizes the Byakugan Bakugan Dojutsu to see through Danzo's bandages and affirm that his right eye is in fact the implanted eye of Shisui Uchiha, someone with which Ao had an encounter in the past. Non-ocular based genjutsu such as those utilized by characters like C, Kurenai, or sound-based genjutsu used by Jiraiya or Taiyuya admittedly don't stack up well against Kyoka Suigetsu, as not only do they require their targets to have chakra, but they are additionally shown to have counters that Kyoka Suigetsu, once cast, wouldn't be susceptible to. However, when comparing Kyoka Suigetsu to ocular-based genjutsu such as the Sharingan, I feel the argument is rather lopsided, since while both focus on altering the 5 senses of their targets, the Sharingan employs varying levels of illusions that have all sorts of different combat applications. I have never seen Kyoka Suigetsu instantly incapacitate opponents in the case of Tsukuyomi or Madara's Eternal Mangekyo. I have never seen Kyoka Suigetsu manipulate the fundamental beliefs and actions of those around it like Kodowa Matsukami, and I have never seen Kyoka Suigetsu rewrite reality as done with Izanagi. Simply making eye contact with one's opponent is also a much easier method of casting the illusion than having them observe the release of a Zanpakuto. However, this is made much easier after Aizen merges with his Kyoka Suigetsu as a result of the Hogyoku's evolution. Both are fairly useful in both cross and inverse scenarios, but I feel the Sharingan and ocular-based genjutsu have Kyoka Suigetsu beat when it comes to both the variety and potency of illusions, which aid additionally in a fight on top of manipulating the 5 senses. While Kyoka Suigetsu is admittedly fairly broken in the context of the Bleach universe, this is again because no Soul Reaper, Quincy, Hollow, or otherwise really seem to possess any real method of illusion resistance, but in Naruto where Shinobi can quite literally see through illusions, it can get pretty crazy and downright overwhelming with the options given by the Sharingan and its many variants and evolutions. But that's about all I really have to say regarding the topic today. I have plenty of other Bleach and Naruto cross and inverse content on my channel and plan to make much more in the future, so subscribe for free if you don't want to miss that or just to be notified of what I may get up to in the future, such as when I upload or stream. Like this video to support both the channel and myself, as well as let me know that this is the type of content you want to see. Again, this topic is quite a heated one, so comment down below if I missed anything, if there's something you'd like to add to the discussion, or with any suggestions you may have for the future. Thank you all for watching, and have a great rest of your day.